I'm at the Vietnam War age.
Oh yeah, right.
So Vietnam War was a huge thing, huge. Yeah, that was a big, major change. I mean, in the sense that, because I was drafted, but I was turned down because I had an infection. I was supposed to go in. I was supposed to go in for jungle training.
Oh.
And they couldn't take me because I had an infection, so they had to delay it. And it's a kind of infection that continues for a while, so eventually they gave up on me, me. But yeah, I was supposed to be in the jungles of Vietnam, where I was supposed to have been. And yeah, that was a big change, because I remember we talked about it. And I remember somebody said, "Why don't we just send a bunch of troops from Vietnam? It's a little country. We can just send over a couple 100,000 troops and take care of it." And you couldn't. That was funny. So he said, "Well, we already have 50,000 troops. Why isn't that enough? I mean, you can't just go bomb." I mean, it was interesting that with all this military power, you can't control a backward, small place like South Vietnam, which mostly people with rifles.
Right.
And you couldn't, but then you got to think, well, that's how the American Revolution started. The British couldn't control the Americans with their little guns. I mean, they were completely outpowered, and they won. So it was just like the same thing, different situation. But it was a surprise to me that our military couldn't just go in there and take it over and just end it. But part of it is they couldn't be as brutal as they could be, and they had to be
ethical.
You have to be a little bit ethical. I mean, you go into a village, there's a lot of nice, decent people. Most of them are, which ones do you shoot? That makes it harder to tell. They're not all wearing uniforms, and so you don't have a clear-cut enemy. I'm sure that 90% of the people there weren't even interested in conflict, just like 90% of Americans weren't interested. It's only a small percentage of people get involved in this stuff. So that was a big surprise. All the money and expense and trouble, and all the lies.
Right.
Like I still remember, there was a very famous speech by General Westmoreland about with the Asian cultures, they have a different understanding of life, and it doesn't bother them when you die, you pass on. And then he showed films of Vietnamese women crying over the death of their children and stuff. And for him to get up there and say, it's like they didn't care as much about their people dying. It was just so gross. It's so gross. He was a head general. You see how out of whack some people, how out of phase with reality some people are. It was stunning. All of history, almost the entire nation is, the whole reputation is based on just a small percentage of the people. It's always that, always that way.
Right.
And that's to say, yeah, it is. Of course, the Chinese hate the Japanese because they did invade China and killed about tens of thousands of people one time, one regime. They still hate them for it. And so, oh yeah, that's one of the hardest things to learn as you grow up, is that most of the things going on are being done by 3 or 4 or 5% of people, instigated. Like Bush sent us to go to Iraq. Most people didn't want to go to Iraq, but he ordered it, and away you go. So it's almost always about history. It's just a few people that or they believe things are told by their media today, the media or their leaders. A real amazing example in Africa, many years ago, there's a war, I forget which country, and it's one group is attacking this other group. And they were saying things like, they're cockroaches, we're going to kill them all, get rid of them. And we look at them, they look exactly the same. They look exactly, they're both same color skin, same huts, same clothing. We couldn't even tell one from the other. But this one group decides their group is cockroaches, and they're having a major war over it. Where'd that come from? Strange what people do.